The Agriculture Minister telling Dr. Hubert Minnis he should know better. Find out why.
The Bahamas gets ready to host a major labor conference.
And a murder accused appears in court today. The Bahamas Tonight, the National Report, starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
Just days following the 26th intersessional meeting of CARICOM, the Bahamas is preparing to host another high-level meeting here in the nation's capital. Good evening, everyone. I'm Charisma Robinson.
I'm Kish Latterly. Thanks for joining us. While last-minute preparations are underway for the start of the 9th International Labor Organization meeting of Caribbean ministers, the Director General of the ILO, Mr. Guy Ryder, paid a courtesy call on the Labor Minister, the Honorable Shane Gibson, at his office this morning. The meeting set the stage for what's expected to be critical issues up for discussion on the two-day agenda. Through dialogue with other labor ministers throughout the region experiencing common problems, Minister Gibson says he's looking to find some resolve to the country's unemployment status.
The lack of decent work, we have underemployment, we have a high level of unemployment. We have that sector throughout the world is being challenged right now, and that is the high levels of unemployment among the youth. Yeah. And even though we want to make sure and address the issue of high unemployment amongst our youth, we want to make sure that it's not done at the expense of our more seasoned workers. As you know, the challenge is, even though we find employment for the youth, if they're being hired through the displacement of those more senior persons, of course, that creates other challenges because those persons always find it more difficult to find a job.
Now, this is the first time any Director General of the ILO has visited the country for such an occasion. Coincidentally, it's also the first visit to the Bahamas for Mr. Ryder. Mr. Ryder views the meeting as extremely important. He says since taking the post of Director General 2 years ago, he's made it a point to attend every conference and recommitted the organization's support.
We're very excited because it's a priority of the International Labour Organization as well, by the manner in which the Bahamas is picking up the green jobs agenda. Of course, we know some of the major projects that are moving forward in the Bahamas, how to reconcile this need to create decent work with the protection of our environment, and how the two things actually can run together and be mutually reinforcing. So I'm looking forward to the next 2 days' work. I think we're going to work hard. But I'm sure, because it's always the way that the Caribbean does its work, we'll do it with a feeling of fraternity, and we'll also try and get some fun out of it as well.
Media reports surfaced today that the National Health Insurance Scheme will come at a cost of $633 million for the full plan and could mean a 5.8% tax for Bahamians.
ZNS News understands that those figures came from a report conducted in 2006 when the plan was first introduced under the first Christie administration and not the report conducted last year.
Now, meantime, the Labor Minister Shane Gibson is refusing to comment on the report, but told ZNS News today that the National Insurance Board will play a part in the rollout of the NHI.
The idea was to initially, because NIB would have the systems in place already to collect revenue on behalf of the government, or behalf of the benefits that they manage, that we would allow them to do the same thing in the case of NHI. I think that's the model that we're looking at, and eventually turning it over where the National Health Insurance entity would then collect their own monies. But I think initially we're looking at, because the structure's in place already, using that structure to assist with the collection of revenue on behalf of the National Health Insurance. Listen, unlike the people who could speculate, I can't speculate, right? When I know what the position is, I will tell the public what the position is, but I don't want to guess, or I don't want to say what I feel should happen, because it's not about me, it's about what we decide collectively should happen. And once I know what the position is, then I can say definitively that this is the position.
Now, the Labor Minister stressed the need to raise minimum wage in the private sector. While it was announced that minimum wage increased in the public sector last month, Minister Gibson says the government is still working with the private sector stakeholders on this issue.
One set of the partners asked for a bit more time to consider the impact. As I tell people all the time, I've never heard yet where employers say now is the right time to give an increase. Never. Their position is always now is not the right time. If you do this, we'll have lots of layoffs. But you know, what we saw in a couple of countries is you actually saw where you had more money circulating in the economy and more money being spent as a result of raising the minimum wage. The persons down at the bottom with the lowest and the lowest salary levels, those are the persons who spend the most. And so if you're able to pay them more money, they're able to spend more money, you could have more things happening in the community. And so I'm of the view that you would actually use it to stimulate the economy by increasing the minimum wage. But certainly, I don't think there's anybody in this country, even employers who don't want to pay it, who would tell you that a person can live on $150 per week.
Police tonight are looking for two men responsible for a shooting that led to a high-speed police chase and left two people in hospital. According to reports, around noon Sunday, a crowd was gathered in front of a residence on Providence Avenue when two men in a green Nissan pulled up. It's alleged that they fired several shots at the crowd before speeding off. Two men were shot, one in the shoulder and the other in the leg, and carried to hospital where they are listed in stable condition. It was not long after that when officers from the mobile division spotted the vehicle on Dean Street. The officers attempted to stop the car, but the suspect sped off. A short chase with police ensued, and officers were able to stop the vehicle but were unable to catch the suspects, who fled on foot. Police have launched an intense investigation into this matter. A 28-year-old woman appeared in a magistrate's court today for the murder of Ariel Lowe. As Fern Carey reports, the defendant is facing 2 criminal charges in connection with that incident.
Bystanders cried and hugged each other as police escorted 28-year-old Catriona Gilbert into court to face murder and arson charges. The Farmingdale Road resident is accused of killing 21-year-old Ariel Lowe last Monday. Lowe's lifeless body was found inside a home at Margaret Avenue in Millis Heights after firefighters extinguished a fire at that residence back on February 23rd. There was a cord around Lowe's neck and a cord hanging from a ceiling. Shortly after the incident happened, a video went viral showing Lowe being slapped and beaten by another woman whose face was not shown. In court, Chief Magistrate Joyanne Ferguson Pratt charged Gilbert, who appeared emotional, with intentionally and unlawfully causing Lowe's death. She was not required to enter a plea to the charge. Gilbert is also facing an arson charge for allegedly causing Karen Stubbs' Millis Heights home to be set on fire. She was not required to enter a plea, bail was denied, and she was remanded to the Department of Corrections. Gilbert's mother and brother sat quietly in court as the charges were read. However, some of her other relatives became emotional. Following the arraignment, Gilbert levied some charges of her own against the police through her attorney, Roberta Reckley.
Now, Gilbert's lawyer complained that she was interviewed by police without her lawyer being present, even though she requested one. It was a complaint that was duly noted by the court. Fern Carey, ZNS Network News.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Lux Men's Warehouse.